I know I'm not the problem. You guys must be the problem. All right, again. Are you ready, big dog?
I'm ready.
Did I even tell you what we're doing?
No.
Welcome to Kansas QB, a podcast about growing up in rural Kansas, hosted by two former high school quarterbacks. And now, here are your manly hosts, Steve Juhl and Tyler Martin.
Yee-haw!
Ride 'em, cowboy.
Growing up in the cornfields of the Sunflower State, we were inseparable, brothers from different mothers, who also happened to be sisters. Our moms, not us. Decades later, he's in Iowa, and I'm in Missouri, but we'll always have Kansas, and we'll always be the QB. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the show. I'm Steve. He's Tyler, and today's episode is entitled The Marks of Midway, Part 3. Tyler, we made it through our marathon live video broadcast of our Season 2 premiere. How did you think that went?
Well, it was fun to be able to chat with everybody that was logged in and following along with us. Looking back, 4 o'clock Central Standard Time is probably not the ideal time to do live podcasts, unless you're going to be like John and take off work to go watch this and then go back to work. But maybe we do it at a different time, which is not conducive to our schedules.
I was going to say, are you available at a different time? Because it seems like that's kind of the bottleneck there.
That's right.
Well,
so, I don't know. We're going to maybe record some of these. So, yeah.
There we go. Well, we are not broadcasting this episode live, but we are recording it for video and audio only today. And maybe that's what we do in the future, Tyler. Maybe we record them at 4 o'clock and then we broadcast them live at 7. And you can still get on a live tweet. You can comment with them. I don't know. Maybe that's something for the future. But we are going to put these on our Juhl Media LLC YouTube channel. So I'm thinking right now, Tyler, if everything goes the way I have it planned, that we will continue to do these video formats so people can, find them on YouTube if they want. Yeah.
Well, no, that's what, even as Maddie sat down and watched it last night off of Facebook, I just cast it up on TV. She also said, you need to give this some other place that I can watch this. And YouTube is the likely landing spot. So it came up. So find the home of Juhl Media LLC on YouTube, and you can watch those future episodes. Right, Steve?
Yeah, you will be able to. Unfortunately, I actually have to do work for my real job during the day. So I had all these things I wanted to do, and hopefully tonight I'll get caught up on getting the last episode that we did finally up on online. Obviously, for folks that are listening to this is Monday. Well, we're recording this on Thursday of last week, so I still haven't got everything up. I haven't even got links to our new Patreon page. More on that. Before we go to Broken News, Tyler, I would like to thank our first subscribers on the Kansas QB Patreon page. We see you, Matt. We appreciate you, Mike. And we love you, Mark and Nancy. Tyler, all of the above need us to send them T-shirts. And right now, we are running a promotion. Anyone who signs on to be a patron of the show through our Patreon page will receive an exclusive KSQB, which is shorthand for Kansas QB, if you didn't catch that, sticker designed by yours truly. It's actually just our logo. Designed by yours truly. This weekend, I will make orders for our first batch of shirts and stickers, so hang in there, folks. We'll get ya your booty in the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 if I get distracted, which happens. But thank you for supporting the show. The more support we get, the fewer excuses we have not to record more episodes. That wasn't a threat, Tyler. That wasn't a threat.
That's fine.
Really quickly, before we get to Broken News, as I've already said once before, I just want to give you guys a little tease. If you see the ticker down there at the bottom, if you're watching the video version of this right now, you can already tell that we're going to be having a visit from a Hall of Fame coach. Coach, I don't know if you want to wave to everyone so they can get hyped to see you a little bit later in the show.
Yes, glad to be here, and I think that you could probably get Kevin Costner to do your yee-haw with one of his cowboy hats on, and that would really be nice.
All right. We'll get to work right on that. I'm sure we'll have it before long.
Broken News.
As we like to say, if it ain't broken, it ain't news. Breaking news is for tryhards, and we no longer have the stamina for that kind of effort. So we take stories that have already been broken and share them with the folks at home. Have you heard about this, Tyler? According to KansasHighSchoolFootballHistory.com, Mark Juhl, the guy you just saw right there, waving at the camera and trying to get us to bring on Kevin Costner, took over the Midway-Denton Eagles in 1978 and won exactly 0 games. In 77, he arrived to assist Bob King. That year, they were 5-4. Then Dad took over, and the results were basically complete futility for that first year.
That can't be true. You can't be your dad's a legend.
That's true. Yeah, he is a Hall of Fame coach, for sure. And Tyler, where are we at on that? Making sure that that Keisha understands that our dads are Hall of Fame coaches, not just in Missouri, but also in Kansas.
Also in the works for other people that are. There should be some news coming out within the next month.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. That'll definitely be our broken news segment whenever that does happen. But yeah, no, I'm looking at it right here, Tyler. 1978. It says, this comes off this website. Coach Mark Juhl, record 0-9, league K36 league, and we got the first game of the year. They thought they had a chance, maybe. I don't know. We'll bring Coach on later. Right now he's muted and he can't share his thoughts. We'll have to bring him on a little bit later, and he can respond to some of this. Powhatan, they thought they had a shot, 20-32. They were in that game, lost. Then they lost 6-30 to Elwood, 0-53 to Troy, 6-12 to Axtell. Which, you know what? If you look down through this list, Tyler, there is exactly one team on here that's like a team that we would continue to play on into the future in 8-man football. So maybe that has something to do with it.
There's a few on there.
There's a couple on there. 0-43.
I'm noticing like we went like 176-6 against the other county teams. That's
a tough thing. That's a tough thing because Dauphin County, once upon a time, Tyler, there was 5 high schools, right? Now we're down to 3, Dauphin West, Riverside, and Troy, still standing strong as the only one still on its own, right? But that was the first season, Tyler.
That's a rough year.
That's kind of a rough year. Obviously, his teams improved over the next several years. He was the head coach from 1978 to 1985, and some consider the 80s to be the greatest decade. Well, that was certainly the case for my dad, as he lost a grand total of 6 games during the 6 seasons he coached in the 80s. So going from a record of having lost 9 games in his first season as head coach, he only lost 6 games in 6 seasons once the decade turned, which, I don't know, that's pretty impressive.
I don't think that you can say some consider. I think all consider the 80s, that decade to be, I mean, that was a straight decade of dominance with the teams and the year after year after year. It was like, looking back and talking to those guys, all those classes when they were running 2 often, 3 often, they didn't want to be the team that didn't win the state championship. So, yeah, I'd say they did a pretty good job of flipping the script.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and I think we're talking Midway football. We're saying 80s definitely the decade. You know, but I'm just saying overall. Some people think 80s is the greatest decade. I mean, Mr. Maggart says all the time, who I do, the basketball broadcasts with. He loves the 80s. That was a great decade. Definitely the case for Midway-Denton football. But Tyler, we'll come back to that in a moment. After our premiere, I told my media students were watching. They're all upset too. You talk about putting it on YouTube where people can watch it. Well, these guys are all under 18. And so they don't have Facebook accounts. And so they're like, are you going to put on YouTube? They're hoping I was going to live stream. So none of them had seen it. So I showed some of it to them in class today. And also, we had them run the show earlier in the day. I'd love to put that on here for some people to see. They read our script, but there was one of my kids was you, one was me, one of them was Sheridan. Like, they did the whole thing. And so I kind of showed what it looked like when we did it versus when they did it. So they would love for us to put it on YouTube. So that was a good point by you. And I said, while I was teaching them, I said, and one of the things we're going to do for our next episode is teach Tyler where the mute button is for when he has to cough.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at.
The things we remember.
We're getting older. We've already forgotten more than we ever knew, but some memories still cling to our brain parts, like the football to the back of Kevin Zeit's massive thighs as he hit the ball while running the 318 strong sweep for another touchdown. This list includes memories from our time growing up in Kansas. Let's see just how well we can remember. In the Broken News segment, we learned that Mark Juhl started out his head coaching career with a stinker of a season. Tyler, we grew up primarily in the 90s, which was after the legend of the Marks of Midway was already well established. There were a lot of good teams in the 90s that we spent a lot of time around, you and I, and Kevin and Becky. Mm-hmm. What are your recollections of growing up steeped in this Midway football tradition?
Well, I remember talking about the players, kind of more than anything as as a coach. Coaches don't often leave everything in the locker when they come home, and they discuss things and they point out the good things that a lot of guys do. And hey, watch this guy or watch that guy. So growing up around the players and hearing stories about how they did things correctly and how the coaches appreciated that was something that I remember. I do think, though, because when we start going back and forth with guys that we remember, a lot of the times you point to guys from the early 80s, from that 80 to 85 when your dad was around there. And then I relate more to the stories of the 80s, at least from those 85 on. And then we kind of both come back into the 90s. But your dad had that experience where he turned things around and just ripped them off, start off. And then my dad kind of just piggybacked off of it, and the train kept running. Those were the guys that I always remember talking about.
And we're actually, fellas, if you're like, well, where's Mark Martin? Well, we're going to have Marks of Midway Part 4, where you find out about the second half of the 80s and on into the 90s. We'll talk with Coach Martin here in a couple episodes, so hang in for that. I think I mentioned that later here at some point. Today, we're kind of focusing on that first part of the program. But again, we were aware more of that 90s after the state championship, so they did go in 92. I do remember being at that game in 1992, and Grammy taking me back to the hotel early because it wasn't going well. And I just remember your dad and his eyes with like the red rims and just, the emotions of having lost the state championship after having won all the other ones, despite having a fantastic season just to get there and have the team that we did. But a lot of those guys on that team are guys that we remember, like growing up. And so, you said, it's the players a lot of times that I remember. It was the Franken boys from the 90s. Yep. I remember, running backs like Ricky Smith. And you remember John Mowry, and we're going to have an episode where you and I talk about
Ryan Anderson.
Ryan Anderson, Jason Griard.
Jason Grider.
Grider, yeah. We're going to have an episode here.
He's a coach in Kansas now, coaches at Bethel College. He's been a very successful high school. Now he's moved on to Bethel,
Well, and so we're going to have an episode, and it's like 40 episodes from now, so it's a ways off in the future. Yeah. But we're going to talk about our all-decade 90s team, and we'll have to get some input from our dads for that. But like you said, the players, but for me, really, because we were the ball boys and water boys for those teams, just remembering just expecting to see the JV guys in the second half. It was our due that there should be a running clock. And I also remember getting out of the van for away games to, because we'd come with our moms, and they were always, a part of the stats crew. And all four of us kids would get out and trudge over to the sidelines, and just being proud walking up to the field, seeing the relative size of our guys to the other, and just feeling like we owned whatever field we stepped onto, because even in the 90s, again, we weren't winning the state championships in the 90s, but those teams were all good. You go back and look, and there was one losing season in the 90s, and all the rest of them were either seasons where we just destroyed all of our opponents and just happened to lose in the playoffs, or at the very least we had a winning record.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're focused on the 80s. As we get into the 90s, there were some down seasons, but down by the expectations that had been set by the program. I don't know that there's too many schools in the state that would look at what we did in the 90s and be like, no, we'll keep what we had. There's maybe 4 or 5 schools that kind of took over us in the 90s, but everybody else, they still wanted to be at the level that we were performing.
As far as my recollection as a child, we were still top 10 in the state every year in the 90s. And but guys, gals, humans and pets of all kinds, don't take it from us. We would like to extend our warm welcome, a warm Kansas QB welcome, now again to the Hall of Fame coach, my dad, Coach Mark Juhl. Coach Mark Juhl, how you doing there, Coach?
I'm doing great. Just happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you.
I'm still alive.
He's still
see all
alive.
The gray hair. I'm still alive. Gray hair, glasses, wrinkled. I'm here.
Well, you look great. From where I'm sitting, you look great, and not any less for the fact that you brought me Chipotle today, because you thought I didn't have lunch. So he stopped by with Chipotle today, Tyler, and I said, awesome. Man. By the way, can you get on a podcast later today? Said, sure. So, Dad, what are your memories from that first winless season in 1978? What was that like?
The winless season was, it was fun. It was really one of the most fun years I had because 13 seniors had graduated the year before when Bob King was the head coach. And they offered me the job. And all we had coming back was like 2 seniors and 1 junior, and the rest were all freshmen and sophomores. So, the old saying that you can't have a zoo without the animals is definitely true. And the problem too with that year was our starting quarterback was Kirk Zeit, which was Kevin Zeit's older brother.
The guy with the
Wasn't as
massive
big.
thighs?
He wasn't as big, but he
Oh.
was very, very quick, super smart guy. Just a great quarterback, but he separated or broke his shoulder in one of our first games. And so he was out. And then we went down to Dan Halling, who actually was I can't remember if he's a receiver, but we put him at quarterback, and he'd never played quarterback before. And we were able to, kind of train him and do some things. But again, we're really shorthanded. And then the only other senior was Danny Rush, and he wasn't a very big guy. He was on the line, but great heart. And so that's one thing about, the Midway area was that we had like farm kids with great work ethics. And really that season, even though we never won a game, it was really fun because we just had a great time. I was pretty close to the same age as the high school kids. So yeah, it was, there were so many games that I wanted to suit up and just go out there and play and try and help them. And I really wanted to do that, but couldn't do that from an ethical point of view. But we just had a lot of fun. It was so much fun. And of course our freshmen coming in, they were going to be, pretty good athletes. I can't remember if Kevin Zeit and, Darren Negus and some of those guys were freshmen that year or what was the next year, but they definitely were a good class coming up.
For sure. Now, when did you make that transition from 11-man to 8-man?
It was the end of the 1979 season. The superintendent, called me in and says, "Hey, we're going to have to go 8-man football next year." And I said, "Why?" We went 6-3, and we had to play teams like Jackson Heights and Horton. Horton was Class 3A. We were Class 1A, and of course Troy was a powerhouse, and they were Class 2A. So we had pretty tough schedule. We went 6-3, and the only teams we lost to was, to Jackson Heights, which wasn't a blowout by any means. And I think we lost to Troy, or did we? No, I think we lost to Troy by 1 point. It was like 6-7 or something like that. But so we were establishing ourselves as a pretty good program. And of course Kevin Zeit and those guys from that class were sophomores. So. Anyway, I said, I don't want to play 8-man football. That's second-rate football. That's what I said was 8-man football. That's second-rate football. I didn't want to play 8-man football. And I said, well, everybody around us is going 8-man, so we're going to have to go 8-man or we won't have anybody to play. And so I said, okay, so now I need to figure out what is 8-man football and what do you do in 8-man football? And so I started calling around as coaches, and I called Nebraska, and I finally found a coach in Turpin, Oklahoma. His name was Jim Waters, who had won some state champions, not only in 11-man, but in 8-man, and he had adapted the 11-man offense to 8-man. And so I called him up and talked to him a little bit, and he said, well, I'll send you a tape. So he sent me a tape, and I got to looking at this offense. It was just hilarious the way their quarterback would fake to the fullback, fake to the halfback, and then he'd turn his back completely on the defense and then dance left about 3 or 4 yards and then turn and run. It was pretty good. But so anyway, I was able to develop some blocking rules and stuff like that for our
And we're going to
first
pause
year.
you there, Coach. We're going to pause you there because we've got an episode coming up where you're going to have to tell that story because we're going to feature that offense that you guys came up with and ran and made synonymous with Midway-Denton. That's its own podcast. So you can't tell us any more about that because we're going to bring you back on later to talk about it. Tyler, any questions you wanted to ask Coach Juhl?
Well, I was going to ask what it was that after the transition and success was building, but what was it really that turned the program around from the perspective of, trying to stay away from what we kind of know is the reason the program turned around with the offense that you brought in. But what was it that you guys did?
there were several factors, and probably the biggest factor was your mom's sister. Okay, your mom's sister, which was Steve's mom. And you're going, well, how in the world did she help turn the program around? And I'll tell you how. It's video was really terrible back then. You'd video a game and it was black and white and you just couldn't see anything. And so Highland had, I called up I called the KQ2 TV, Channel 2 in St. Joe. And I said, hey, do you guys have any like 16 millimeter cameras that you're willing to sell? Because I knew 16 millimeter was so much better quality. And they said, yeah, we have one for $300. And of course, I didn't have $300. And so I told him, I said, well, I'm going to come and pick up that camera. And so your mom, Steve, and of course, Tyler's mom's sister, went along with it, even though we didn't have the money. And said, we'll figure out some way to pay for it. And you talk about making a difference, because we were in the playoffs in 1981, and we just started filming the games. The first one was the game before the first playoff where we played Mankato. And I got to looking at this tape, and I'm going, what in the world is he doing? Gary Grider, what are you doing? He was my starting right guard. And I thought, what are you doing? They're not supposed to do that. And so I got to where I could grade our linemen and see exactly what they were doing because of this video camera. And the camera quality was so good. And Steve, your mom and I would drive down to Topeka on Saturday morning and get the film developed, because we had to take it down to Topeka, to a place in Topeka, to get the film developed. And so we would drive down there on Saturday morning, get it developed, and I'd come back, and then I'd go through the tape. And then on Monday morning, I would have a whole new plan of how we were going to improve because of what I saw on the tape. And of course, our kids did not like Monday morning, because Monday morning is when they got hammered. What in the world are you doing? And so it was, I tell you what, that camera was one of the biggest reasons why we were able to turn the program around. Of course, the kids had great work ethic. They took, they took everything that I said and they put it in the game. I mean, we worked so hard in practice, and those kids were just so great. I mean, you're talking guys like Darren Negus, Kevin Zeit, Andy Clements was our starting right guard, that year. And of course, my starting left guard was Gary Grider. 130 pounds. And he had just such a big heart. He actually ended up and played at Friends University. But here's the attitude. You know how sometimes kids will get in games and they want the glory. Their glory, it says their motivation is, hey, I want to see my name in lights type thing. And that's just human nature. With these kids, I'll give you an example. We were playing a team. I think we were playing Wakanda East or something like that. And Scott Elder, who was a junior, he was my starting fullback. Scott Elder ran for like 300 yards and scored like 5 touchdowns. Okay, so now we're getting ready to play Argonia, and these guys are huge. And I was thinking, oh gosh, there's no way, Gary, you're just not big enough to block that, the 250-pounder that's going to be ahead of you. So I went to Scott Elder and I said, hey, Scott, here he is, the hero of our last game at fullback. I said, Scott, I'm going to have to move you to left guard. And Scott looked at me and said, Coach, I'll play wherever you want me to play. I mean, just no, Coach, I really want to play fullback. No, I'll play wherever you want me to play. That was his attitude. Just talk about a great kid. So we put him there, and it really messed up Argonia, because Argonia was looking for this fullback who had scored all these points in the game before. And the coach told me, they came back to school, where is he? And well, he was on the line. And we had moved Darren to fullback, and Joe Albers played halfback. And Joe was really fast. He was a good basketball player, but was really fast. So we had a guy from Argonia come over to our crowd and said, hey, we'll bet you $1,000. Anybody want to bet $1,000 that we beat you? And I mean, that's how confident Argonia was. And we ended up stomping them. I mean, they
44
were
to
good.
16 was the
44
score
to 16. That was the stomp. And so I'm just telling you, it was videotape. I was able to be a better coach as a result of analyzing the videotape and seeing. And of course, it never would have happened if your mom would not have helped us figure out some way where we could spend $300 for this camera, and then went down with me every Saturday morning to get it developed. It was just awesome. And then, of course, the kids, the work ethic, and of course the system. And you put all those things together, and then that's how we started a very, very good football program.
Oh, a lot of good stories in there, Tyler. How do you like that technology piece? I mean, you take it for granted now as a college coach.
That's what I was just giggling because I remember I would go back from when I was even playing to when Dad was still grading with tape, and like I think we touched on it, all the VCRs that you guys wore out, forward, pause, rewind, pause, and I look back at it now, and I can't see anything. Now you show me a high definition camera from the side, and I'm like, I'm not watching this. I want to see. I need all 22. I want it from this angle. Now, if I don't have practice from a drone, I'm like, what am I watching? I'm not going to try to do anything with this.
Well, Dad, we're at the end of the show here. You named a lot of guys that played for you. A lot of names from back in those early '80s. Before we go, in about 15 seconds, are there any other names that kind of come to mind anytime between 1978 and 1985 of just players that were integral to your guys' success winning those state championships?
Well, there's a lot of names. I mean, I'd have to name everybody, but I remember a guy named Brian Heinen. He played center for us that first year. He was a senior. He was like 240 pounds. I mean, pulling center. I mean, can you imagine a 240-pound guy coming at you, and you're playing DN or you're a halfback, and you're going, oh gosh, and then these guys were so good at run through blocks. I mean, they just wipe people out. So, Brian Heinen, I mean, there's just so many people that I could name, I mean, like Mike Becker. I don't know if any of you guys remember Mike Becker. He was just a little guy as a sophomore. I mean, this guy only weighed about 120 pounds. He comes back the next year and he weighs like 210. And you're going, this guy put on, almost 90 pounds in 1 year. Mike Becker. Of course, his brother, David Becker, was a Rhodes Scholar. This guy did not play basketball. He didn't do anything, but he loved football. This guy was so smart. He was my starting right guard in 1981. And I was so happy that he liked football. He was a left-handed, very, very smart kid playing right guard. And he just loved football. And right now, he's probably a multi-millionaire because of all the patents and stuff that he's developed. And but anyway, the Beckers were great. I mean, just a lot of family. Scott Elder, the Zeitz. You've got Darren Negus, and then his brother Danny Negus. He goes by now, but he's a dentist. Just a lot of great kids. I mean, just memories that I'll never forget. Even when I get Alzheimer's, I don't think I'll forget these guys.
You might forget me, but you'll remember those players.
I'll remember those guys. Yes.
Well,
I
Coach,
won't forget you guys either.
I know, but thank you, Coach, for spending a little time with us. We're gonna all say goodbye to Coach Juhl. We'll cheer him out. Yeah.
Thanks,
all
Mark.
right. Thanks, Dad, for joining us on the show. But before we go, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end. Before we go, we want to remind listeners that they can now support the show. Tyler, did you know about this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they can just head right on over to www.patreon.com/KansasQB and subscribe to our podcast. Now, you can obviously get our podcast regardless of whether you do that or not. And as long as you're listening, awesome. Keep bringing those downloads to us. But we are currently offering 3 levels for anyone wanting to pay to help us out, support us. We have 3 tiers of subscribers that each have their own set of perks. Perks ranging from in-show shout-outs to a Kansas QB t-shirt, a Kansas QB sticker, exclusive bonus episodes. You might be thinking, why only 2 episodes per week now? Well, because we are doing every other week a bonus episode for those that are paying the $5 a month or the $10 a month or the $50 a month. Don't have anybody doing that yet.
Only have 4 people doing that. So if more could jump on board.
Yeah, right. But we do want to thank those that are already supporting the show. I actually sent a text to my wife and said, hey, there's people actually paying us to do that. And she's like, oh, great. What's Tyler's split? I was like, we're not talking about that yet. We're going to figure that out later. But right now, it's like, hey, we got a reason to do this show now, right? Even for my wife. So thank you for all those guys that did that. Tyler, but did you know that our friend Matt has even offered to do something artsy for folks who subscribe, like maybe design something?
Yeah, we talked about that, and I don't know if he'll be able to do like custom stuff for people, but maybe some Midway artwork. You saw him draw the eagle. My daughter wants the stickers so that she can put them on all of her thousands of water bottles that are around the house. Along though, I'd like some coasters. We're gonna see what we come up with. But Matt, our friend Matt, is willing to help us out and step up and do design some old school Midway stuff for us.
And don't worry, Matt. We're not gonna make you design something new for every single subscriber, but just maybe a template that we can exploit.
Yeah.
Anyway, that does it for Things We Remember. As we reached 1986 in the Midway Eagles football dynasty of life, we're just thrilled that we remembered something. Kansas QB is a production of the Juhl Media Podcasting Network. And before we go, we want to thank Tracy Lindley of Tracy Lindley Voiceovers for the way to professional audio, as well as Sophie Schilling for providing audio for Hallie's Hang Up during our premiere. And of course, I'd like to thank Tyler for clearing time in his busy schedule to talk about the marks of Midway for the third time.
And I'm excited to keep doing this with you. And as we get this oiled, when we're going to do it, we'll not just have something witty here, but I am not going to be the one that signs off. I like how you did it last time, so you don't have to look at me. I want to end with how you do it. So that's the last time we talk about this. Now you can end.
But you're such a good-looking guy, and you have such a wonderful voice, especially with that new microphone. You sound so tasty. Well, that's enough of that. For Tyler, I'm Steve, wishing you big fun in your small town.